And what America's doing now is consuming and increasing debt as a way to solve their problems. Listen, that's what caused the problems. America's been consuming for 25 years. America's been going deeper and deeper into debt for 25 years. That's what caused the problems. And so now this genius comes along and says, we're going to do more of the same. It's not going to work.
What should be done?
Well, what should be done is you go ahead and take the pain down. Now, granted, if you take the pain now, it's going to be sharp and it's going to hurt. There's no question. But, Yost, for the past 15 years in America, we've had the worst credit excesses we've had in world history. And it's spread to Europe as well. You don't just come out of a horrible period of excess like that and say, oh, well, that was too bad. Now it's finished. Now we can go on to bigger and better things. Somebody has to pay a price when you have a horrendous period like that. So take the pain, let a lot of people go bankrupt, get it over with, and start over. That's how you solve the problem. In Japan,
is that possible? Is it possible to have like millions of people going bankrupt or unemployed?
It's better to have millions going bankrupt and unemployed than having tens of millions down the road and people scrounging for food. Yes, of course it is. Do we look for it? Do we think it's exciting and wonderful? No, of course not. But we've had these terrible excesses. And second of all, we do have a lot of umbrellas now, safety nets now, to help people. I'd rather have millions of people unemployed now with the safety nets than tens of millions of people where the safety nets have all collapsed and the safety nets cannot support people. Then you have riots in the streets. Then you have the end of the world if that happens.
You're a market fundamentalist, aren't you? In the end.
Yeah, more or less.
More or less?
Well, yeah, that's how I look at the world, yes.
What is more or less?
Well, yes.
Good.
The answer to your question is yes.
If you think about that, we could say that after the collapse of, let's say, the natural opponent in 1989, it took the system as we know it only 20 years to blow itself up from within. You would agree with that, right? That the system blew itself up from within its own principles, I mean.
Well, hold on. By the system, you mean the American...
Capitalism as we know
You mean the American financial system? Yes, it blew itself up. You mean capitalism is defined by the Chinese? No, it exploded. Yeah, exploded, but it boomed. China in 1989 compared to China in 2009 is, that's capitalism personified. It's been spectacular capitalism. Listen, in China in 1989, they barely had a stock market. They barely had highways. They barely had cars. They barely had anything. Now they have refrigerators and air conditioners, and they're all living well, and they're traveling, going to Amsterdam to see the canals. No, what are you talking about? Capitalism has done extraordinarily well.
It's autocratic capitalism, something else, isn't it?
Well, yes, there are people who say that, although look at what's happened there. In the past 20 years, it's opened up enormously. But what they had before didn't work, so they've tried capitalism and it has boomed. Capitalism on Wall Street has collapsed.
So why did capitalism on Wall Street collapse then? What made it different?
Well, incompetence is what always makes things collapse. But incompetence by free money, easy money, too much leverage, too much borrowing.
Well, that's inherent in the system.
Well, that's inherent in any system. Why did the Soviet Union collapse? They were the most corrupt people in the world and incompetent. You talk about a corrupt and incompetent.
Sure.
Why do you think the Soviet Union collapsed? Why do you think lots of things have collapsed?
Still, the principle of capitalism, of market fundamentalism, let's say, would be something like greed is good.
No, well, that's what you say. That's what you're a socialist TV network. No, but listen, one reason that we had these problems in America right now is because the government would not let the market work. Alan Greenspan, every time people got into trouble, they'd call up Mr. Greenspan and say, save me, save me, save me, save me, save me. And he would save them. He would never let the system work. If he had let the system work, and if he had let people fail. In 1998, a company called Long-Term Capital Management was on the verge of collapse. He raced to the rescue, bailed out everybody. Had he let them fail, for instance, Lehman Brothers would still be around. Bear Stearns would still be around. Had he let all that happen, they would have been hit so badly that, first of all, they wouldn't have had the fools running them anymore, and they would have all been fired. They would have lost so much money, they couldn't have gone and done some of the crazy things they've done. They would still be around had he let them fail. had in 2001 when the dot-coms were all collapsing. Had he let people fail, but every time somebody called him up and said, save me, and they were always from Wall Street, Mr. Greenspan did not take calls from farmers. Mr. Greenspan did not take calls from school teachers. He took, but if the head of a Wall Street firm called him up and said, save me, he saved him. That's the problem. You're talking about market, if that's what you mean by market fundamentalism. Had he let the market work, we wouldn't have these problems today. It's people like you who said, save me, save me, save me, that caused the problems. I promise you, you let the market work and it'll take care of itself. Always has, anyway.
What I'm trying to get at is when you use the word worked, it's still in the old paradigm of growth as the beginning and the end of everything.
Well, had you rather live in North Korea or South Korea? I mean, you answered the question for me. They're both Koreans. They both speak the same language. They have exactly the same everything, eat the same food. Would you rather live in North Korea or South Korea? You have your choice. Would you rather live in Hong Kong or old China? Well, you have your choice. I mean, you rather live in Taiwan or old China? I mean, Joost, if that's what you want, then I urge you, become a mystic and go to one of these countries and live with no growth, and you can all go and pick berries in the woods together.
Yeah. Is there something in between? Like we rethink growth because it's like eating the planet, for example?
But somebody has to pay for it all. We all want to have a wonderful, simple, relaxed life. But who's going to pay for it? Somebody has to pay for it in the end. And if you can say, okay, we're going to give up growth. We're all just going to take care of each other. That's a wonderful way to live. But it's going to come to an end someday, because in the end, somebody has to be productive. Somebody has to be the nut who goes out there as an entrepreneur and builds a company.
Rogers zal nooit twijfelen aan het marktmechanisme, aan het gelijk van het kapitalistische systeem. Dat systeem belooft Azië immers een gouden toekomst.
But there are always people taking advantage of changes, and what you have going on now is part of more of the transition from the West to the East. I mean, it's just accelerating the decline of the West and accelerating the relative increase or rise of the East. I mean, the East has the money. Joost, look around. The creditor nations in the world, China, Japan, Korea, Formosa, Hong Kong, Singapore, all the money is in Asia now. Throughout history, that's how the world has developed. The people go where the money is. Whether it's good or bad is not the point. That's the way it's always worked.